Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Gifted Neurodivergent podcast. My name is Lillian Skinner. Today, we're going to talk about overexcitabilities for the last time, but this one is probably the biggest one. And I have a couple announcements before that I'm really excited to share. So I'm on the board now of umbrella.org, which is US based because there's actually one in Australia as well. And umbrella.org serves the neurodivergent community. We're trying to build what I was talking about when I said we need to build a group, we need to build a collective, we need to build a guild. They're running with the idea that I was talking about with SAG and a guild and a way for all of us to come together and pool our abilities, pool our resources, and then put a standard minimum for what we charge or what we negotiate. We're trying to create a place where we can educate each other, train each other, cultivate each other, and then also help each other get work, because our system is set up against us. Our system's set up to not educate us. The system's set up to not cultivate us, and our system's set up to not get us into working. And I know right now a lot of you are being shed, and I'm seeing this incredibly. All of these brilliant people I know and have worked with in the past cannot get back into the system. They keep saying why, and they keep blaming themselves. And my point every time is it's not you. It's the system. It's falling apart. And the first people it sheds is you and I. It sheds the most creative because we're the ones that build innovation. We are the ones that are about the future. And the system isn't about the future. The system's about right now. It's about making money right now, getting the last amount of money they can get out of it before it collapses. And the wealthy are not concerned with us. They're not concerned with us all. I just saw an article yesterday that was about Jeff Bezos saying he was putting $100 million to fund for homeless people. At the same time, he put $500 million plus and fund to basically make prices for houses higher because he was going to buy all these single family homes. If you're a healthy country, you wouldn't let people do that. You wouldn't let very wealthy people exist when the outside's wealth like that, but you wouldn't allow them to get into the personal home market because they price people out and you end up with a feudal system. With the umbrella, we're trying to create a new way of being and doing and seeing the world. And one of the reasons that I started this podcast was that I didn't want you internalizing it as you, because we have spent a lifetime of being forced to internalize that we were the problem. The overexcitabilities are a huge part of that internalization because they tear us apart. And I think the overexcitabilities are why so many of the boomers are broken, because they were told that they were deviant. They were told that they were worthless. They told that what's wrong with you for being what they naturally are. But I just want you to think a little bit about these overexcitabilities, because the truth is we have all of these overexcitabilities and they are in literature everywhere. I mean, we are the people that make up the main characters of every story, every adventure, every lone hero. And we're also the people that are the gods of stories. If you look at the mythological gods of Greece and Rome and Hindu and all of these places, you will find the people all have outsized overexcitabilities. They are the most gifted. And this is something that patriarchy did to take away from us. The ancient Egyptians started it where they pulled apart feeling and the intellect and made it only available to the upper class, and then the lower class only got the thinking. If you take away the feeling, you're taking the big picture away. It's not really truly thinking. It's the absence of feeling. So since your feelings really give you the past and the future, if you're only thinking and cognitive, you're only dealing with the very present. They didn't want us thinking about the past and the future. They didn't want us to have that role because that means we would notice that it wasn't very fair, that it was rigged against us. And so they've spent all this time talking about cognitive, when truly intelligence is about feeling and thinking, sensitivity or sensing and cognition. And those two come together in the most intelligent people, and that's you. You're the most intelligent people. Now, we do have different kinds of giftedness. There's two kinds. There's sensing giftedness, and then there is cognitive giftedness. And our system only recognizes a cognitive giftedness and sensing up to a point. They don't want me in the system. I'm going to be a rabble rouser. I'm going to be the one who says, well, that doesn't make sense because I'm a future person. My brain is really, really good at past and future. Because of that, they're going to always say I'm not gifted. And I think a lot of you out there are going to fall in this category. If you're listening to this podcast and it's resonating with you, it's probably because you're a big picture thinker, you're a big picture savant, and you have not been cultivated at all. You have been thwarted at every single turn. But that's going to change because they're going to need all of us. Everything's falling apart. It's crashing. It's breaking. And we're the ones who build it back up. Now, when the Native Americans came to the Americas, they came over the land bridge. It was 60,000 years ago. That's right when civilizations were occurring. They were starting to be made. 30,000 years ago is when patriarchy came up. And the Native Americans were in the Americas, and patriarchy pretty much came out of Europe, the old world, I guess is what you would say it. They came out of every place but the Americas. And the reason that patriarchy was so successful was that they stripped you of the most intelligent. They stripped you and they went into that Egyptian thing where they were just talking about your thinking and not your feeling. Your feelings were bad. You weren't supposed to have feelings. But the truth is, your feelings are what's around you. They're all the sensing data you have. They all come together. They do that ruminating modeling and such. You do your spatial giftedness. And you and I, those of us with that talent, if we were not born into the wealth, we were put away. But the wealthy people still have some rabble rousers. Those are most of the people that probably made it famous that you might have heard of, and they kind of turn their back on their own people because they were so sensitive. But for the most part, people like myself, people who have both the cognitive and the sensing intelligence, we were thwarted. Especially being a woman, I was constantly being told by other female leaders, teachers, coaches that I needed to be less. I needed to know my place. My grandmother, my aunt, my mom were constantly saying, Lillian, you're too much. You are a ball buster, is what my mom used to tell me all the time. My aunt said nobody was ever going to marry me. I was just constantly being told that I needed to be less me and more demure, more feminine. It was my personality that was destroying everything. That's a really harsh little lesson to grow up as a kid. But there's something in me that is self-preserving. And I don't know what exactly that is, but I have the stubbornness of a pack of mules. And it has saved me. And I want you all to start being more stubborn. I want you all to start self-preserving because we are going to be going in through a really rough ride. And in order for you to get through that, you have to believe you deserve it. You have to believe that these people have cheated you out of what would be a fair deal. I'm not saying you need to get righteously angry and blow things up or destroy things. I'm saying that we're going to make change, and we're going to do that through these organizations. Now, I've had other places come to me and ask me to be a part of their book or join their group, but then they've changed their mind because I was too honest, because I was saying, well, no, I'm not going to bend my belief system because this is the only thing that we have right now. And if I don't say the truth, I'm not going to help people heal. And I need everyone to heal so that they can be ready for the massive change coming. Everybody needs to know that it is not them that is the issue. It is the system, and the system has been beating them over the head since they were little tiny kids. And they need to recognize that they actually have an incredible amount of ability, an incredible amount of talent, an incredible amount of intelligence. And the only way we're going to get through this next era is if they're solid, if their core is just healthy. And so I can see the long term. They're short-sighted. They think that I should bend, that I need to be what my grandma and aunt and mother said, which was less me and more what the society says I should be. But the society has been actually the thing working against me the whole time. I hate the fact that they call us deviant, that they call us lazy, that they call us bad attitude. Those are not true. Those of us with introspection, they're making us internalize shame. I think shame is the only emotion that doesn't bring up a message. It just says duck. It has one really simple thing, and that means everybody on the outside staring at you. But it doesn't bring up an actual message. It doesn't change. It's always the same thing. Shame for me is about the outside. It's about the other people's feelings. It's about them being able to control you. And shame is really powerful. It's really powerful. We have it so much in our systems. And I've talked about how I think that this is what the imposter syndrome is and what's really behind most of our mental illness and what's really behind the outside message that you are not worthy, you're not deserving. And I want you to realize that that is an accurate message in the sense that you're not going to serve the system, but you were never meant to. You're not supposed to. You're the one that changes things. You're the one that serves the small group. I read an article and it was talking about how in Mesoamerica during Aztec and Mayan times, there were all these other cultures or other smaller groups that weren't as large as the Aztecs or the Mayans, and they were as equally as advanced, but they were much more egalitarian. Because we are the ones that maintain small groups, we would be able to bring our intelligence to these smaller groups and keep them at pace with the very large groups. Having very large groups that thwart the brightest people, the most sensitive people like me are not going to end up in the system. They're going to get pushed out and they're never going to create the things they're supposed to create. I see this with my husband. He's still hurting from repeatedly being told that he may deliver, he might be pretty smart, but he doesn't know the way things work with business. We're just so tired of hearing that we don't understand the relationships and how to navigate business. I've been hearing that since high school, and I think, are you kidding me? I can see right through all of you. And my husband doesn't have the same cognition that I do in people. He has it more in things. So I have been trying to say to him, don't listen to this. This is bullcrap. And it is so hard to counter the message because every day they're on you. Every day they're telling you this. And I'm watching so many brilliant men like my husband struggle to find a job right now. And I keep saying to them, please don't internalize this. This is not you. We're supposed to move outside and start something new. We are the fail-safe. We're the safeguards. We're the ones that are going to make sure that things don't go off the rails and everything collapses. We're the ones that start something new. Don't want to even think about how horrible this can go because it's really not good. But I know that you're the leaders. I know that you are the people that are the ones that will be able to see and react and handle the stress that's coming. We are really good actually with stress when we get in touch with ourselves. I have all those high emotions. I was just telling them at Umbrella, I'm going to need somebody to get in front of me because sometimes my emotions are so high. And I have these instances come up where all this clarity comes up with this really high emotion. But in that moment, everybody's staring at me because I'm like, no, 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 ramping up the self-protection. I had one of those this week where I was reading this article that somebody wrote about how autistic kids, maybe that video games were good for them, which I was on board with, which is why I started reading the article. But then she started talking about the imagination or the lack of imaginative play for autistic kids and what was behind that. And it was sort of like, what's wrong with them? This woman's a doctor in autism and she doesn't know this. If you asked me as a little girl why I didn't do it, I would have told you. I would have told you. I knew as a little girl why I didn't do it. I didn't do it because it was too much. You were sitting there watching me and I needed to be alone. I do imaginative play. I do all these conversations, but mine is very much more adult-like. It's not play. It's me going through all the conversations that I'm supposed to have. I was constantly rehearsing conversations. I was constantly rehearsing everything. I didn't just trip through life. I was planning all the time because I don't have filters. So I need to be prepared so I know what to focus on. And that's why we're all struggling all the time when we go into new situations because we don't know what to focus on. But when you're the leader, you already know what to focus on because you're the one that made the plan. So it really is cured by us being leaders. But when you're younger, you're still waiting to learn. You're still trying to navigate. You're still trying to figure out where you go. And everything in our system actually is set up to thwart you. It's not there to cultivate you. It's do the opposite. So my goal has always been to first figure it out for me, then figure it out for other people. People keep asking me, why don't I have a process, a plan, something that's executable repeatedly? There isn't a way of doing this repeatedly. Everybody is unique. We're talking about the outliers here. If I had the same process for all of you, I'd be putting you in a box, which is the whole system. The whole system thinks that unless you have this process, it doesn't exist. But I've been through a bazillion processes and they haven't worked for me. And all I've been starving for is somebody to see me and tell me what I am excellent at and what I need to deliver for the world. And that's what I was starving for. And I had to give it to myself. And now I'm trying to give it to other people so that they can get started on that path, so they can give that to other people, because that's the way it was. That's how it really started. It was one-on-one. And I think the Native Americans really actually did a beautiful job with this. They had overexcitabilities. They named people based on what their overexcitabilities were. Where they got it is the same place I got it from. I first noticed overexcitabilities around me in dogs, in cats, in animals. We've done dog rescue and we've had so many dogs come through, and each dog has their own personality and they all sort of embody parts I know in people. We have some dogs that when you come home, they're shaking so hard, their whole body's vibrating. It's not just their tail, like literally their back is seesawing and whipping back and forth. And I would say that's an overexcitability because only a couple dogs have had it to that degree. And then we have another dog right now, Max, who is a sweet dog. Not the brightest dog. He can't do any of the dog puzzles, but his ability is in people. His ability is in other animals. He has such a sweet demeanor. He's very attuned to humans, very attuned to other animals. He's a mom dog, but he's a boy. And this makes me realize that there is that second type of intelligence. Max is a feeler. He feels other people. He feels other animals. I can leave him with our bunnies and he won't eat them. I can't say that for any of the other dogs I've had. They'd all eat them. I don't trust a lot of the dogs in the sensing area, but Max is one of those. And there is two very much types of talent. There's a ton of people out there and they have this really beautiful way of moving through the world. They're healers, they're beautiful people, and they are eaten up and spit out and brutalized in our systems because nobody is protecting them. And yet they're trying to heal everyone else, and that is wrong. And you are the empaths. Empaths, you have gotten a raw deal, and I'm so sorry for that. And I got it too because I care. I can't hurt people. I really, really don't want to hurt people. I want people to heal. The only thing that I might have slightly more of than most people is my cognition translates. My emotions come up and my cognition translates. But that may just be because I had a trauma when I was very little, and that trauma made my emotions and intellect connect. And since we're going to be going through a lot of trauma, I think a lot of people are going to experience this. And if they have somebody to show them, like you, like me, if they have somebody to show them how to use it to heal, how to use it to grow their own intellect, that would be huge. That could change the world. And that is my goal. My goal is to help everyone understand that trauma is the greatest learning experience, and that if you are allowed to actually have your reality and you're not constantly being forced to submit and pretend that it isn't there, you won't have the trauma. It won't be PTSD. It will be trauma, learned, don't repeat that again, and healed. The fact that our emotions all come up because of trauma, because of past experiences, is our guide. That's the thing we're looking at. And our overexcitabilities are in between the high, super high emotions and the nothing, the waiting for stuff. We tend to have nothing or a lot of emotions. There's not a lot of in between. If you're familiar with neurodivergence, this is kind of our hallmark card, right? Everybody's sort of, oh, you're so emotional, or, oh, you're not emotional enough, or there's just the extremes. And those of us who aren't emotional enough, it's usually because our dopamine's high and we can process our emotions. And those of us who are too emotional, our dopamine's low, or we just have an extreme amount of emotion. But those emotions are information, they're sensing information that's coming up from your subconscious. And our subconscious is our bigger brain. It's our long-term memory. It's all of the data we need. So what I wanted to do today was show you how in the school systems, they give us rules. I used 20 rules from our school systems, and there was only one that I didn't use. That was respect diversity, because I didn't feel like that was an overexcitability. And that's a more recent rule. But the other rules, they were pretty typical rules that I grew up with. And these rules are just 20 elementary school classroom generic rules. I broke them up and put them in the buckets based on what the overexcitability would be and how it is oppressing the overexcitability. Because if we learn through our overexcitabilities, which I'm sure we do, because it is when you are excited, it is when you have your most active state, or your most emotional state, or your most imaginative state, or your most intellectual state, or your most sensual state, that you are really the antenna. You're just turning everything on. And you can have a bunch of those at the same time. I want you to understand that part because that's key as well. And the more you're having, the more you're in your element, the more you're learning at your maximum. We do not test on those of us who learn like this. We don't test that. We are only interested in testing for regurgitation. That is not true intelligence. True intelligence is creating your own. True intelligence, genius, belongs to the creatives. They kind of say this, but they never fully say this, and I find this to be maddening. But I'm not sure if it's intentional or if it's just that they don't have people like us in the system to actually correct. And I think it's both. I think at some point they knew this, they peeled away the differences like they did in Egypt, and then the Prussians went into it further. And the Prussians are the ones that really kind of came down with these rules to crush the overexcitabilities in the schools. The Egyptians are the ones the first to pull it apart. And then now we just have modified it and modified it again in America. They've transferred this around the whole world. And the whole goal of it, if you even look on the U.S. Department of Education's website, they will say that the goal of education is to make good moral citizens, to have proper morals, to have people who are productive. It's not necessarily about really education. They're very clear. It's about you being a part of the production. It's about productivity. It's about you delivering for your country. It's not about your country delivering for you. You're never taught how to ask for what you need. You're never taught how to have proper boundaries. You're never taught how to have anything that's really going to make you your full potential. They only give that to the upper class, and the upper class pay for it, and that's why they get it. But the upper class go to different schools. They set the whole system up for them. And the education system's how they do this. Education system right now is falling apart, is cracking, it's breaking along the seams, and the poor people who are falling in the cracks are the neurodivergent children, and they are the future. And what my goal is to educate the parents, and then the parents will help educate the children, and we will put out new AI software, and we'll put out so many other ways to learn, because there's already a million zillion ways your child can learn, and it's not in the school system. I put my children in, and then I pull them out, and I put them in and pull them out, because it is really a delicate balance for us to find healthy. It's a lot. And so having the flexibility to be able to work from home, and they can come home and they can be with us, and then they can go back out, it's ideal. I really think that we're moving towards the times when we all had a craft. Somebody I was talking about how he sees craft as the new thing. And I was like, yes, craft, because craft is the combination of work and life. Work and life is the future. We're going to bring our children back home. We're going to have communities where we have artist communities. We'll all have our abilities that we contribute to the community. And then our children will be a part of that, and they'll be able to go walk through the community and learn by internship, by seeing, by being a part of it. We have denied them all of that sitting in a classroom, the staleness of the classroom. The classrooms are set up so that they get harder for someone like you and I to learn, because we are creatives, and creatives pay attention to the negative space, and the negative space is everything going on. And then they give you this little black and white paper. They've got a colorful room with all this stuff going on. And that little black and white paper is the last thing you're paying attention to. And yet they want you to focus on it. And they tell you every day there's something wrong with you for not focusing on it. They also have these rules that crush your overexcitabilities. So for psychomotor, and I always want you to think of Zeus for psychomotor, because psychomotor is, they're the people that have a lot of energy and they do things. So they have stay safe. Now, stay safe is pretty important, because children who stay safe are the ones who aren't that smart. The kids who are not pushing the boundaries, who are not trying to learn, who are not taking it in, they're the ones who aren't interested in how the world works. I wasn't a kid that pushed the boundaries too much, because I had such high sensitivity, but I did push the boundaries. I was always imagining things, I always intellectually things, but my body is very sensitive, so I wasn't throwing myself at places. I was trying to figure out how to do them. But I would push, I would climb the trees the highest I could. I would climb the ropes at gym and hit the ceiling, and it was 2 stories high, and a lot of kids wouldn't do that. I did physically push the boundaries to some degree, but I also realized that I had limited strength thanks to my Ehlers-Danlos. So I wasn't going to be one that stood out as such. But I do believe that those of us who are bright, those of us who are trying to map the world, we're pushing the boundaries. We're pushing the boundaries, and we're going to test stuff. And when my children would go into the world and test things, people would be saying, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. And I didn't do that. What I said was, try it a little bit, and this will happen. And when that happens, you know what that means is if you push it any further, a bigger version of that will have. I was with my friend who had her son with us, and we were near a river, and the river had a big log jam, and he wanted to go on that log jam. And his mother kept saying, no, don't go there, don't go there, don't do that, stop doing that, don't do that. And I said to him, go up to it, push on those logs, and see if they move. Because if they move and you step on them with your full weight, guess what's going to happen? You're going to go right through those logs. We're not going to be able to get you back out from underneath them. Because this was a serious log. These were whole trees that were logged up against this bridge. And so he went up, he pushed a little bit, it moved. And I was like, it kind of looks like a beaver dam. He's like, it sure does. I'm like, a very big beaver dam. But they're going to roll away under your weight, and then you will be stuck under those logs, and we will not be able to get you out. And he stepped right back and went back. I know that his mother probably thought I was insane for the way I was doing this, but that is the way you talk to children who are brilliant. You talk to them like you are explaining science. Raising your hand, staying in your seat, keeping your hands and feet to yourself, cleaning up after yourself, respect for classroom property, use restrooms at break, and listening when others are speaking. So raising your hand, staying in your seat, keeping your hands and feet to yourself, also using bathroom at breaks. I think all of those are you holding in yourself. They are just talking about you physically containing yourself, which is really hard for us. So the harder it is for you, the more you're showing overexcitabilities and the less you're learning. They're just making you internalize you holding in. It was torture being a little kid in our school systems. It was torture. I remember thinking, I can't make it through the day. Every single day of my life, I just can't do it. There was never a good day where I was like, yay, I really enjoyed school. Unless it was a half day and there was a party for that day. That was the only time I thought school was fun. The rest of the time I thought school really sucked. And I want to just show you that carrot and the stick thing where school's drudgery. And then right before a holiday, they have a party. That party does not make up for all of those days of drudgery, but they act like we have parties. It's kind of like the pizza party at work. We're going to underpay you. We're going to not treat you very well, but we'll give you a pizza party every time you guys do extra good. I don't think pizza makes up for the horrors that I've put myself through or I had to give up on, like all the things I wasn't able to go do, my own hobbies, meeting my children's needs. But yeah, that pizza party, wow, pizza, it's so amazing. The cleaning up after yourself, respecting classroom property, and listening when others are speaking, those are all things that I found myself having to take care of other people for. So I was one that wanted to touch and see everything, but then I felt like I couldn't actually touch and see everything because they were, you're going to break this, you're going to break this. So I never really got to use my 3D thinking, my spatial giftedness, because I was afraid all the time of touching it. So they were preventing me from learning in that way. The keeping your hands and feet to yourself, meaning don't touch other people. Do you know how much connection we have that we miss because we have all these rules around touch and all these rules around healthy boundaries? They're not actually healthy boundaries that they're asking us to do. Healthy boundaries are done through negotiation, but they won't let you talk to people in class. So you never really have those negotiations. You're never really taught how to read people and be comfortable. So everybody's kind of bumping around, doing it very inappropriately, doing it very inadequately, and nobody learns how to be comfortable with each other. And they have all these rules because they've never been taught to do it organically. Every person's needs are different. So some people really want a hug and other people are like, please don't touch me. And I'm the extremes of both. Sometimes I could really use a hug and other times, please don't touch me. It depends on what level I'm at. But actually, the worse it gets for me, the more I don't want you to touch me, the more I need to have less input so I can process. Listening while others speaking is such a hard thing for me. Other people just don't process as quickly as I do, or they don't think as quickly as I do. And so I'm waiting for them and not trying to be rude, but literally it's painful to have a conversation with most people who are average because my brain goes so fast. And it's not cruelty that I mean this. I don't mean that I'm special. It's a thing that's true. I really struggle, and it doesn't get better as you get older. It's worse because your brain processes faster. The next one is for intellectual overexcitabilities. Follow directions, finish assignments, ask for help, be prepared, be positive, stay on task, and raise your hand when you have a question. These are really hard. The thing that slows you down with the intellectuals, which is raising your hand, staying on task, ask for help, finish assignments, follow directions, those make me tortured. Everything, the directions when I was a kid, the finishing assignments, the staying on task, the asking for help, all of those were so hard because the teacher was average and I wasn't. And so when the teacher was giving instructions, I didn't even know what she was asking or saying. I didn't understand it. It had too many meanings. My children are going through this in college right now. My son and daughter are, Mom, can you help me read these directions? I don't know what this means. It's really hard when you go to a teacher and you ask them for help and they tell you to go read it again over and over because they're acting like you're not trying to focus. And what you're really trying to do is you're trying to figure it out because your brain is so big, your brain is so intellectual that you see many meanings in all these words. We see context in things that other people don't. We don't go for average. We're not two deers. We're multidimensional. I struggle every day with average documents in our government because I don't know what the heck they're asking. And I know I'm not alone. They wouldn't have all these people that do jobs that answer questions about these documents if they were very clear. They're not very clear, and everybody interprets it differently. And they put this whole uniform school system in so that we would all be able to at least sort of think the same way. But it didn't work. It didn't work because guess what? They made it too oppressive. Then it became basically a filter of who's average and who's not, and filtering out everybody who's not average. So it didn't work because it actually ends up being the downfall of society because it gets rid of all the smartest people. Being prepared, I think intellectually, I was so frustrated by being prepared. I was always prepared, but they didn't want me to do it on the outside, and I was doing it subconsciously in the inside. And the fact that we make these kids put everything down over and over again, even with my daughter in math, they were telling me she was disabled because she couldn't write it all down. She could actually write it down, but she didn't want to because she could do it in her head to 18th grade, and they were still on 4th grade. She was frustrated as heck. And that's the other thing is we're super far ahead, but we're also the extremes where we have one talent, our brain goes all in on one part of our talent, and it runs that part up to 18th grade or whatever. And then the rest of us is maybe still all over the place. It may be at 6th grade, it may be at 10th grade, it may be at 2nd grade. But we have that extreme talent, kind of like the gods, where we are childish in one way and adult in another. And that is a showing of talent. Yet they took it away from us. They gave it to fake examples of it. And then they said humans weren't allowed to be like that. Humans were supposed to be all average. Now, being average in this world is pretty darn nice. You're not really taxed much at all. You're told you're smart. You move through the world, it's great. But when things change, when things become not repeatable, everything's sort of more chaotic, then you are going to be very, very glad you are you, that you are gifted neurodivergent, because you are going to be on it. You're going to learn to get in touch with yourself, and your brain will deliver what's coming up next and what to do about it. And the older you get, the better it gets. The following directions, the finishing assignments, I mean, all of those are the reading thing, and then being positive. This is a huge big deal because my intellect and my emotions connect. So by making me be positive, I'm getting the least amount of information from my subconscious. I used to have to write positively, but I was a big, deep, morose child, and I had a lot of feelings. And when the teacher was saying, this is not a good story, this is not positive, I used to want to cry because it's like, I don't have positive experiences to pull from. But also the sad stories, the negative emotions. The negative emotions are where the payload is. The negative emotions are where you have those deep amounts of information coming up. I don't have as much with the positive. And I do have really beautiful feelings. I didn't have them as a child, but my emotions as an adult have been much more positive. And so it's not that I don't have those experiences, it's just that I didn't have them then. But positive information, positive feelings, they don't deliver the issues, or they don't deliver the solutions. They're not quite as clear. Now, I'm not going to say they're not at all, because I do definitely get those are eurekas, and that's a positive feeling, and those bring up big payloads. But it is in the negative feelings that I get the most detail. The next one's sensual overexcitabilities. Now, sensual overexcitabilities are use inside voice, be prepared, and this one has to do with being prepared. Now that if you have higher sensitivity, they want you to bring in tinted glasses, headphones, anything to help you so that you can get through the system. So that means you have to bring more stuff than everybody else. And then they're like, well, why didn't you bring it? It's like, dear God, I'm a little kid. Why don't you make an environment that's healthier for me? One that's not so garish, one that's not has negative space so filled up with so many bright colors that I can't see this boring black and white paper you gave me, because I focus on the negative space and work my way inward. We are the deductors. We start on the outside and move in. So we're going to notice the positive space last. And actually, I don't think we even notice the positive space. I think we actually use the negative space to deduct to the positive space. And so while that works really well in nature and people and how things move through in science, it doesn't work that way in the classroom because it's an artificial space. It's not meant to teach you how to be and move through the world naturally. It's meant to disable you so that you are a good animal that they can put a halter on and lead around and do labor for them. I mean, this is really about making us all into workhorses. Respect classroom property, share and take turns, clean up after yourself, and be on time. Sensual is, again, it's about sort of like a constant combination of emotions and feelings. And I think share and take turns, it's really hard. You want to touch it, but then you also have to give it up to other people. And those of us who are more sensitive, we're going to not spend too much time lingering and learning. We're going to give it to other people because we're conscientious. Cleaning up after yourself, again, with the conscientious. I mean, I needed it to be clean because otherwise I was overwhelmed by all that, because we take in so many inputs, but also I felt I had to take care of other people and I had to clean up for other people because they constantly are drilling into us, be a good citizen, be a good person. So I was constantly trying to be that, and yet they were constantly telling me that I was a bad person because I asked the wrong kind of questions or I pushed too much in the wrong way. And basically what it was is I was just pushing the teacher to be a better teacher, and they weren't capable of it. And the one that I think is most upsetting to me is be on time. We are such feelers. Brains are going all the time. The being on time, they have so much focus on being on time and good attendance and not being tardy. You miss 10 days of school or you have 10 tardies, and they will come after your parents and try to put them in jail. That's ridiculous. When I was a little girl, I was sick all the time. If that 10 rule was up there, I would have died. I would have been failed every other grade. And I think that that's ridiculous. I don't think 2 weeks is enough. I was sick for 2 weeks at a time all the time growing up. And if you brought a note, it was fine. But here, where I live now, it's if you miss 10 days and there's note or not, it doesn't matter. You're screwed. You have to repeat the grade. And this is in private school and public school. And I think that's ridiculous because I pay for my kid to go to a private school so they don't have to be under those rules. And then I bring them home to homeschool because we do get sick more. We are more sensitive. Our bodies run down more. The schedule that they have is horrible. My kids get up. They were in elementary school. They got up really early. They had to be up at 6 a.m. in the morning. That's a really early time for a little kid to keep doing over and over and over again. And I think that's inappropriate. I think that they should be allowed to figure out what their own schedule is. We put kids in schedules now as babies, and they never learn what their own schedule is. And I see children who have really high overexcitabilities, and they're like buzzing, boys in particular. They're buzzing. They can't focus. They can't And I also want to say that we don't understand that the most brilliant boys, particularly the most active, the ones that everybody is mad at all the time because they're kind of destructive, they're in their overexcitabilities. Their body's trying to compensate for the fact that they are so exhausted, they're so past their ideal state, and they're constantly in their overexcitabilities. Those boys need more sleep, they need more downtime. And the other thing is you're not going to actually get them to focus the way they should focus and learn the way they learn because they don't hit that part of their cognitive growth spurt till adulthood. I know this because I hit mine at 9 and 10, and it was like I woke up from a dream. I remember before 9 and 10, I can go back and look at all those memories, and they're always sort of foggy. Like I can remember what people are doing, but it's sort of like the Charlie Brown, like, I really didn't understand with clarity what was going on. And then I hit 9, and it was like I woke up, and then I went from black and white and the Charlie Brown talking to clarity. Now, our brain grows, I think, in the subconscious first. And this is why we learn as babies, and it's all immersive. And I still learn like that. My brain never grew out of that style. But what happened was my cognition came online. In most people, what happens, I believe they move from subconscious focus to conscious focus. You and I, we never grow out of the subconscious focus, and then we add conscious on top of it, which is why my body all of a sudden went to heck when I was like 9, 10, and I started with chronic illness, and I started getting sick all the time, and I really started to show the signs of having neurodivergence and particularly autism and that high sensitivity, is because my cognitive brain came online and my subconscious didn't. And this is our disorder, which, give me a break, that's an amazing thing. When it came online, it was taking so much resources. I just remember sugar. I need sugar all the time. And I see these boys running around. They're lost. They can't focus. But it's because their brain hasn't fully matured. It means their subconscious is still running. If you gave them the immersive learning, they would be so much better off. I was talking to a teacher recently and saying, you also need them to not have so many inputs. If you want this child to focus, then you need to give them a dark space and not have these bright white walls with 5,000 different colors on it. They can't get past that to see the positive space, the worksheet you want them to work on. You have to give them a space that has less going on negative space-wise so they can focus at the positive space. Put up a curtain in the corner and let that kid go in and have no negative space for the most part going on so they can focus at the positive space. We do not really care about the outliers. We really are out to thwart them. And I don't know how we can have been around since 250,000 years and the Europeans aren't aware of this. They're completely aware of this. They're doing it on purpose. They're trying to oppress your child. They're trying to oppress you. Imaginative overexcitabilities, creating concise presentation, follow in rules and directions, finish assignments, ask for help, stay on task, stay safe, and be patient. When you're an imaginative kid, your brain is going all the time. I see us being as imaginative. All imaginative is spatial giftedness, and it's your ability to process that information in your subconscious. So everything that I wasn't doing imaginative play, I was doing it. I was just doing it in my head. I did everything in my head. I was constantly in my head. And they yell at you for being in your head, and then they yell at you for not being prepared or not asking for help or not staying on task or not staying safe or not being patient or not having a concise plan, when that's exactly what you're doing in your head. You're doing all of these things. You're asking your other brain for help. You're actually trying to figure it out yourself. You're trying to figure it out in context. They don't want you to have context. They only want you to believe what they say and regurgitate it. So if you're bright, you're working against yourself in entire education. As you get older, the more the spatial subconscious builds all those amazing networks, the more that you have all that knowledge in actual context and patterns. The older you get, the more that delivers for you. They call it crystallized intelligence. All that means is your patterns are completed. And by the time you're middle age, you're 10 times what everybody else is. And if you're an outlier like we are with autism and ADHD and anything else, you're in a higher that. They say twice exceptional. You know what twice exceptional means? It means both cognitive and sensory intelligent. It means 2 exceptionals. It doesn't mean that you are less than. It means that the school is trying to thwart you from being gifted because you're too gifted for them and they can't control you. If your parents bring you home, which is why I had Abby on that podcast, Abby's a perfect example of someone who's twice exceptional. And when your parents bring you home, you get to be fully exceptional. All right, emotions over excitability. Be positive, again, with the controlling how you think. Respect others. Listen when others are speaking. Ask for help. Use restroom during breaks. Now you need the restroom part because emotions are high and I needed to get out of the room and then I would have to ask and I was about to break down and I just needed to get away so I could collect myself and they wouldn't let me do it. And it left me so bare. and vulnerable, everybody would be mocking you because you're just having such outsized reactions. All I needed was a corner. Could I just get away? And that's another reason to have that little dark corner so that kids can retreat, because our emotions are so big. We need space when we're little kids because we're not managing them and they're not giving us the payload that they do when they're older. And so if you get that space, if you get the space to go by yourself, then you can start managing them and start getting the payload of information that's coming up from your subconscious. Asking for help is a demeaning experience for most of my life. I see it in my children too. They ask for help. The teacher's like, go read it again, or says some snide thing. It doesn't understand the child's needs because the teacher's average and the child's exceptional. Listening when others are speaking. I mean, this is really hard. I don't listen to people like they say we're supposed to. I don't look at people because I can just kind of close my eyes and absorb it on many levels. Or if I'm staring at the person, my eyes are flittering around to all of the different things that their body's doing because my brain is taking in all of that. And then I'm ruminating about all of the mixed messages they had because we have so much fakeness in our world. And I'm trying to figure out which message do you mean. The reason that regular people can see those messages, we're joking or not, is that we're actually taking in all the messages and we know that they're canceling each other out and we're trying to figure out how much they cancel each other out. Other people don't know because they're only going based on a really simple pattern that's basically a 2D pattern. And you and I, we don't have any simple patterns. We have only complex patterns. And so everything is complex. Well, this could mean any number one of these patterns. And if you are being contradictory in the way you're talking and it's supposed to be comic, I think that most neurodivergents, they have really funny personalities, have really funny content to offer, but it goes over the head of most people because it's so brilliant. It's snarky and it's snide and it makes other people uncomfortable because they don't know what it means. And that's why we're told we aren't funny. But every comedian I know is basically, they're a slight different version of me. They're telling everybody in ways that are acceptable. They're funny. I say it as it actually is. I might as well get my head chopped off for being brutally honest the way I am. Comedians are being brutally honest, but they make it funny. Their delivery is a little better than mine. I could take a page from them. Emotions. The be positive thing, again, if they're restricting you to just being positive emotions, you're not getting the most information. If you're forced to be positive, that means you're constantly masking, and that takes away all of your energy. So our emotional overexcitability is a really important part because it comes up really high and it brings up this information or brings up something that's trying to help you deal with the situation. It can be to get out of there. It can be you're fearful or that you're really sad or that you really just need to get away from that moment because you need to process what happened and because this person isn't good or safe or kind. And your body's like, no, don't hang around this person, get away. And then in school, you're trapped because school really is prison. It's prison for children. And if you take children from school and put them in prison, there really isn't too much of a difference other than they don't go home at night. Honestly, if you go to boarding school, you're kind of in prison. Something to think about as a parent. Respecting others, listening to others when speaking, they're constantly drilling that home like we're not doing it correctly. When for us, it's more complicated because we are more complicated. And everything is set to this average so that you're going to fail. You're going to fail at being a human being because you are a god. And I don't mean that, get a big giant head. But what I mean is you are the outsized version of humans. You are going to be the higher highs and the lower lows. You're going to have the strengths and the weaknesses. You are like the gods. And this is why Rick Riordan is so popular because we're the extremes of humanity. They make it seem only that in mythology, but by making it mythological, they take away from the fact that there's real human beings like this. And those are what those were based on. They're curbing us from being our full selves by making gods and saying these are not real. You are real. You have amazing abilities. I know some of you have no idea what they are, but that's kind of the whole process that we go through to figure out what they are. We have to go outside the system to figure out what they are. I'm not going to do a whole system on you because I don't believe that you need a system. We need to figure out what you are, and you are unique, and your strengths are one thing and your weaknesses are another. And we're going to figure out how your strengths are fed by your weaknesses, how your weaknesses give you those higher lowers that I've talked in the past so that you can see the full gamut and the full perspective. Perspectives are intelligence. The more perspectives you have, the more intelligent you are. And also the harder it is to get through our boring, everything average world. All right, that's my podcast for this week. I hope it was valuable. It's a long one. Let me know what you think. Take care.